Welcome to Oxford News This Week. I'm Elgin Nichols.
And I'm Terry Stiles. In this week's news, school district superintendent starts a podcast and a groundbreaking ceremony is held for a new senior living home.
Stay tuned. Learn more about these stories and others. The Oxford News begins right now. Last week, the North Oakland Transportation Authority Board voted 9-0 to approve the terms of a 41-month lease with PYP Ventures. The company will rent 10,000 square feet of space inside NOTA's new 20,000 square foot building in the village of Oxford. Earlier this year, NOTA spent over $1 million of its $2.6 million fund balance to buy the new building. In addition, they will spend over $500,000 to renovate.
North Oakland Transportation Authority employees received a raise, but the decision was not unanimous. The NOTA board voted 5-4 to give a 5% raise across the board to all employees in the next budget year. This includes 28 full-time and part-time drivers, 2 dispatchers and a head dispatcher, an operations manager, and the executive director. The board passed a second motion in a 9-0 vote to increase the wages of the drivers and dispatchers by an additional 2.5%. This will take them from $14 to $15 per hour. For the head dispatcher, the total 7.5% raise means increasing the hourly wage from $15 to $16. The NOTA board members and Township Supervisor Bill Dunn made the second motion stating he felt drivers deserve raises because they have more responsibility than other jobs that pay similar wages. A motion to review employees' wages after NOTA moves into its new headquarters was approved in a 9-0 vote.
A groundbreaking ceremony was held this month to welcome a new 54,000 square foot senior living facility to Oxford and Orion Townships. David Fulkerson of Grace Premier Senior Living said he expects the facility to have one of the best cultures in the United States for conscious, loving care. Grace is currently under construction on the west side of M24 south of Manitou Lane. When completed, the single-story facility will offer nearly 50 units for residents requiring assisted living and 16 units for those in need of memory care services. According to Fulkerson, the units will surround a common area containing dining rooms, a movie theater, and hair salon, among other amenities. The idea is to have everything situated within the short walk of residents' rooms.
Oxford School Superintendent Tim Throne has a new podcast created to inform, entertain, and effectively communicate with parents, students, and the general public. It all started when Throne was approached by a colleague at the end of last school year who asked if he would be a guest on the colleagues' podcast. Throne was hooked after trying it out and receiving positive feedback. Then Matt Johnson, Director of Marketing and Communications, and Danielle Stublinski, Communications Specialist, encouraged him to create his own show. The idea for the podcast is to do 1 episode per month during the school year, so Tim is looking for content suggestions. So if you have them, please contact him at timthrone@Oxford Schools. Listen to his podcast by searching Oxford Community School on SoundCloud or iTunes, or find it on the district website, oxfordschools.org, then search Superintendent's Podcast. Congratulations, Tim.
A Brandon Township resident is grateful to the Oxford community for contributing to a Shop Oxford basket, which quickly raised money to help fight lupus, a disease affecting her family and her family for generations. Earlier this year, Ginger Gwendon's 6-year-old granddaughter started showing symptoms of lupus. Ginger has been an active volunteer with the Michigan Lupus Foundation for several years. She helps to organize walks and other events events to raise money and awareness for the disease. A total of 23 Oxford businesses donated items ranging from gift cards, clothing, decor, and pet supplies, and other items totaling over $5,000. If you're interested in purchasing a slot or viewing all of the basket's contents, do so by visiting mylupus.org and clicking on the Shop Oxford Gift Basket tab.
The 13th Annual Friends Flavor Fest, supporting Addison Township Public Library, was a hit last week. Guests spanning from Oxford, Addison, Rochester, and beyond all gathered at the infamous Buell Estate located in Addison Oaks County Park, and they stood for an evening of food, drinks, and music performed by a local pianist. With over 100 tickets sold, the event brought in just over nearly $5,000, which will go towards building the new library.
Seymour Lake Park was the site of a successful fundraiser and adoption event for the Oxford-based Canine Stray Rescue League last weekend. The event raised over $1,000 for the rescue group and enabled 3 dogs to find their forever homes. The event was a DECA Club project and organized by Oxford High School students Trent Brown, Allie DeRochers, and Tommy Smalley. That was a great program.
I'm so excited for that event. Canine Stray Rescue always needs help and always needs volunteers and money, and they're trying to, I guess, either increase their facility or buy a new one, build a new one. I can't remember how that goes.
Doesn't it kind of touch your heart when you go by and see the little doggies with their noses pressed against the glass?
Oh, I'm telling you, I've ended up with 2 dogs from there just by editing. And my mother got her dog from there. My sister got both my sisters got their dogs from there. It's just a great rescue group.
Well, there's something coming up. I think it's called Halloween.
Yeah, so here I am dressed in, I don't know if you can tell that's orange or not, but there's my Halloween costume, it's this. But it's always such a fun event in the village of Oxford. Everybody comes from miles around to go to that event.
Right. You folks want to be careful because you got the little critters, the little goblins, floating all over.
Right.
And what is the curfew, for the village?
I think Kyle said it's 6 to 7:30.
6 to 7:30,
And if you're unsure, give the Oxford Police Department a call. They'll let you know. But also they have a big posting on their Facebook page, and you'll know what the event, the time is. But when you're out there on Halloween, please be careful. It's dark by the time those kids get out there, and they're running willy-nilly. It's amazing. I go every year with my grandsons in the village, and it's amazing how fast people just speed through those streets when all these kids are everywhere.
Right, and the kids are impulsive, so you gotta be more careful.
They're excitable, and they can't see really well because some of those costumes, I'll tell you what. But anyhow, have fun out there and be safe. It's a great experience in the village. So that's it for Oxford News this week. If you'd like to learn more about these stories or others, you can pick up a copy of the Oxford Leader newspaper, or better yet, you can catch us on our website at OCCTV.org, and of course on YouTube and our regular Spectrum Channel 191 and Charter Channel 99. No, I have it the other way around. AT&T Channel 99.
Oh, that's good. Being as Halloween is coming. Trick or treat. Here we go.
Right, I just tricked.
Coming up is OCTV's very own Cody Wright with school sports and schooling news, incorporating great topics with Alexis Ware. And you won't want to miss Auto Talk and Science in the News with Dave Kenny.
I'm Terry Stiles. Thanks for watching Oxford News this week, where we bring your news closer to home.
And I'm Elgin Nichols. Remember, always be kind to your friends and neighbors, and thanks for watching.
Welcome to Science in the News. I'm Dave Kenny, and these stories are taken from the publication New Scientist. In our first story, ice shelves that have already disintegrated on the eastern side of the Antarctic Peninsula may have been predisposed to collapsing because they were thinning out for the past 300 years. An analysis of fossils suggests the ice shelves in the region have been thinning since around 1700, leaving those such as Larsen B vulnerable to their recent breakups as human-caused climate change took hold. What scientists know about past losses of Antarctic ice sheet is limited because satellite records only extend back to the early 1990s. To go further back in time, James Smith of the British Antarctic Survey and colleagues looked at fossils of single-celled algae in a mud sample taken from near the South Orkney Islands off the tip of the peninsula. The team used the ratio of 2 oxygen isotopes in fossils to estimate past changes in the climate and glacier discharge, the melting of the ice into the ocean. The isotopes revealed that rate of glacial discharge was stable for most of the past 6,000 years and started to speed up around the start of the 16th century, but not beyond natural variations. A stronger acceleration started around 1700, followed by an even more rapid one at the start of the 20th century. The greater losses from 1700 correlate with a strengthening of a climate phenomenon known as the southern annular mode, bringing stronger westerly winds, warmer air temperatures, and possibly channeling warmer water into the area, melting the ice from above and below. The ice in this region may have been losing mass for several hundred years. But the rate of change during the past 100 or so years has been far greater than any point during the past 6,000 years in the record, says Smith. Eric Rignut of the University of California in Irvine says the study should be treated with caution and puts too much emphasis on the recent collapses being down to changes around 1700 rather than the dramatic warming seen in the last 50 years. The results need to be confirmed by independent data, and the reasoning that the collapse of the ice shelves was caused by enhanced melting over hundreds of years is highly speculative, he says. Andrew Shepherd at the University of Leeds in the UK also sounds a note of caution and says it is hard to pinpoint events as precisely as we'd like. Although there is a clear rise in oxygen isotopes related to iceberg production during the 20th century, it's hard to be certain before then. It's clear, though, that the rapid ice melting has really only occurred during our lifetimes, and that's no coincidence in my book, he says. In our next story, humpback whales use their flippers to create a barrier that traps gathered prey, which they can then usher towards their mouths by swatting the water. Using aerial photography and filming, researchers were able to capture this foraging strategy for the first time. The first time I saw this behavior, it was from a boat-level view and looked chaotic, says Madison Cosma at the University of Alaska in Fairbanks. But the whale just kept repeating this behavior over and over again, and I watched it for hours, she says. Cosma and her colleagues monitored the feeding behavior of 2 whales over the course of 3 years near sites near southeast Alaska where salmon are released to boost their production. The researchers photographed and filmed the whales from above during feeding using digital cameras attached to either a pole or a drone. They saw both whales perform the trapping behavior called pectoral herding, which started after the whales had used their flippers to generate a net of bubbles to confine prey near the water surface. Both whales then performed the technique using their flippers to create a physical barrier that prevented prey from escaping. This was followed by a rapid lunge towards the prey, which were engulfed into the whales' open mouths. One of the whales was also seen using its flippers to guide prey into its mouth. Over 90% of the pectoral herding was used for targeting juvenile salmon. The whales performed pectoral herding when they were both moving vertically and horizontally. Humpback whales have long flippers called pectorals, which increases their maneuverability by helping them navigate in shallow water and accelerate rapidly. This was the first direct evidence that humpback whales use their flippers to herd prey, says Patrick Miller of the University of St Andrews in the UK, who was not involved in the study. Miller says many other research groups are now following the animals at sea using drones, which will enable further investigation of how humpback whales interact with different types of prey. Well, that's it for this edition of Science in the News. I'm Dave Kenny. Stay tuned to Oxford Community Television.
Hello everyone and welcome back. Last week was pretty eventful with equestrian camping out at Addison Oaks and 5K walks at Kingsbury Country Day School. Last Saturday was a Carving with a Cause event at the Legacy 925 Center to help raise funds for Haven of Oakland County. They also housed a gun show that day. This week on the 28th, Addison Oaks is putting on another event, this time for the younger kids. This Monday, bring your young ones out to participate in the Tiny Twigs events. They have tons of outdoor activities and crafts for everyone to do. The week slows down a bit after a busy weekend and Monday with not very many events on the school calendar. Bridges High School will be celebrating their Spirit Week as as a consistently fall weather rolls in. Be sure to stay tuned for coverage of some of those events and activities coming up. If you haven't heard already, Superintendent Tim Throne is joining the online streaming world with his new podcast on SoundCloud. According to leader reporter Danielle Smith, the idea in the podcast is to inform, entertain, and effectively communicate with parents, students, and general public. Tim is going to discuss topics about the schools, start times, and even M24 construction coming soon. To hear the latest podcast discussing school finances, search Oxford Community Schools on SoundCloud. It can also be found on the district website by searching Superintendent Podcasts. Tim also urges anyone with suggestions or podcast topics to email him directly at tim.throne@oxfordschools.org. Here's a little clip from that podcast.
A vlog today, maybe, depends on how we look post-camera.
Nothing worse than being one and done.
Exactly, and we're not one and done type of guys, so we'll fight hard. So welcome to Oxford Schools podcast, which today, like I said, we're going to do a video blog version, but our vision and mission at Oxford Schools is to create a world-class education to shape tomorrow's leaders. So we've worked through that for years to get to that point, but then our mission is to provide an education that challenges all students to achieve their maximum potential in academics, arts, and athletics, and prepares them to succeed in a global society. So I guess, Tim, let's start with our mission and vision for a second, because we're rocking into 2019 school year, and like people say to you all summer, like they say to me, how's your summer break? And you and I look at each other every day in the office, so it's probably not much of a break. But to come today as the Director of Marketing and Communication and bring to you what we started a year ago, and really give Joe Amable credit for his work of education in the podcast world of our staff, kind of latched onto that and some of my outside world ventures that I do to launch us into this conversation, but to be able to communicate better to our staff. So that's why I'm sitting here from our communications office to figure out how do we do this better and provide other channels for our own staff, not just the outside world. So we just want to welcome everybody to listen into our conversation. As I say often, I get Tim Throne every day.
Yeesh, that's scary.
Yeah, sometimes I just stay in my office and lay low, but not very often. But our staff don't have that same kind of interaction with you every day. And what I say to staff that I interact often, and they maybe only get you in a staff meeting or in that frequent walkthrough or visit to their building, I said, man, you got to get to know our superintendent and how much he cares. And obviously, some people look at our relationship where I get to report just to you and deal with the things that you got top priority and get done for you. I just want to use this time on our really scheduled 14 segments that we'll have this school year, but to let our staff get to know you, but then to let this leach out of our staff. So it's a conversation that lets our community know what's really going on inside of Oxford Schools. We're not a brick and mortar that's hiding to keep people out. We're very invitive. We understand our core values, one of those being trust, truth, and transparency, and making sure that there are no shadows or hidden spots that people feel they can't see us. So with that said,
Yeah, so a shout out to Joe Amable right here, who invited me to do a podcast right at the end of the school year. I was a little tentative, hadn't done one of those before, and he was gracious enough to ease my way into it, and we had a good fun time. So yeah, so we're gonna try and expand and doing some more podcasts as well as these video podcasts, vlogs, and we'll see how it goes.
Again, that's Oxford Community Schools on SoundCloud. Another video coming up is one from Bridges High School during their OK2Say presentation. Take a look.
My name is Mrs. Ells, and I am here from the Attorney General's office. OK2Say, I don't know how many of you were here last year when we did the same presentation. Okay, so review for some, okay? Anybody want to tell me what they know about OK2Say and why we come back year over year? Yeah.
Okay, so it's basically like bullying, like cyberbullying, so you can speak up.
Okay, so No, you think it's speaking up about cyberbullying, things like that?
Like in general, like playing games.
Okay, very good. Very good. That is definitely a component of it. Yes, honey.
Another part of it is with teen suicide. If you notice someone feeling suicidal or if you are found suicide, you can call and someone can go and check on the person.
Absolutely. So it's a suicide awareness. If you know of somebody that is potentially talking about taking their own life, you can report it. Anybody else? We got the gist. Okay, but the key word is confidential. Okay, and the whole premise of when OK2Say was developed was all of you as young adults. Okay, how many of you, we know that snitches get stitches, right? So nobody wants to, they know maybe something that's happening, they don't want to be the one to draw attention to themselves in fear of retaliation, okay? So the OK2Say program is a confidential reporting system that has to do with anything regarding student safety, okay? We've been around since 2014. And I'll give you a little history. I don't know if you heard about this last year, but OK2Say came about as a result of, I don't know if you guys remember the historical school shooting, Columbine. Okay, Columbine, those of you, it was back in 1999. The most newsworthy school shooting at that time, Columbine put together a Safe to Tell program, meaning anybody that knew of a school tragedy that could likely happen.
OK2Say is an organization that travels from school to school and district to district demonstrating this presentation and giving an outlet to students to communicate to adults ready to help in case of emergencies. To learn more about this program, log on to OK2Say.com and stay tuned to the Schooling Around segment for the entire episode. Coming up is Cody Wright, but I hope you all get out and enjoy some fun fall pre-winter weather. Until next time, I'm Alexis Ware.
What's going on, Wildcat fans? Cody Wright back here with this week's sports report. We're in the last few weeks of our fall sports season now, as hard as that is to believe. Soon we'll have a winter sports schedule: basketball, hockey, competitive cheer, boys swim, wrestling, and bowling. Anyhow, let's not say goodbye to fall just yet. Let's take a look at how our Wildcats are wrapping up their seasons. First off, boys football team struggled in their last home game against the tough competitors from West Bloomfield. It was senior night, and the night was themed military appreciation. West Bloomfield sits atop of the division and took the win of the night 48-0. The Wildcats now have an overall record of 1-7 and 1-5 in the OAA Red Division. The boys now have one last tough match to complete their season schedule on the road, and they will be taking on Oak Park, who sits in first place in the OAA White Division. There'll be more on that next week. Also, the boys soccer team ended their season in the district finals. The boys won their district opener, taking down Swartz Creek 9-1. However, with a trip to regionals on the line, the boys were unable to pull it off, falling in a tight match to Grand Blanc 2-1. On a high note, though, the girls swim and dive team absolutely pummeled Berkeley here in home waters, 120-65. The girls are now 8-1 overall and 6-0 undefeated in the division. Now the girls begin preparation for the league meet that lies ahead. All swimmers and divers will be competing in the preliminaries, and they will follow up on the results of that next week as well. And last but certainly not least, the boys and girls cross-country teams competed in the Oakland Activities Association Red Division Championship at Clintwood Park in Clarkston. The boys took fourth place with 88 points, and the girls finished in fifth with 102 points. All that lies ahead now is the Michigan High School Athletic Association regional meet at Goodles Park in Algonac, the last race of the season. So stay tuned next week for the results on that as well. We got a lot to hope for the next few weeks as the results wrap up our 2019 fall sports season. It certainly has been a blast. Anyhow, that's all for this week's report. For any more info on these events and more, go to oxfordathletics.org. There's plenty of game breakdowns, statistics, and more all right there for you to check out. Once again, that is oxfordathletics.org. While you're at it, might as well check us out at OCCTV.org. All of our coverage of these events and more can be found on our YouTube page, which you can access through the website. Once again, that is OCCTV.org. And that's all for me this week. I want to thank you all for watching and remind you all to tune in next time. But until then, I'm Cody Wright. Go Wildcats!
Welcome to this edition of Auto Talk. I'm Dave Kenny, and these stories are taken from the publication Automotive News. In our first story, Ford Motor Company on October 22nd reported a 57% drop in third quarter net income and lowered its full-year profit guidance, citing anticipated higher warranty and incentive costs and weaker sales in China. CFO Tim Stone said Ford now expects total 2019 earnings before interest and taxes of $6.5 billion to $7 billion, down from its earlier projection of $7 billion to $7.5 billion. This would represent a decline from the $7 billion earned in 2018. We think quarter three was a good quarter, Stone told reporters at Ford's headquarters in Dearborn. The progress we've made also indicates that we have more work to do and more opportunity ahead. We think the trajectory is improving across the business. Net income fell to $425 million in the quarter. Ford performance was hindered by $1 billion in special charges related to its global restructuring, as well as charges from the creation of its joint venture in India with Mahindra. Global revenue fell 2% to $37 billion. Ford North American profit rose 2.5%. Or 2.7% to $2 billion, but the company lost money in all other regions. Ford Credit made $700 million in the quarter, while the automaker lost $300 million in its mobility ventures. Stone said Ford is preparing for a worse-than-expected close to the year, in part due to rising incentive costs. Joe Hendricks, Ford's president automotive, said Ford needed to put higher incentives on three vehicles: the Edge crossover, Ranger midsize pickup, and F-150 pickup. The automaker has been working to resolve manufacturing issues with its redesigned Explorer large crossover. Although there are many opportunities to improve the launch, Stone said, volumes have reached expected levels and the company is seeing improvement quarter over quarter. Hendricks admitted the company took on too much with the redesign of the Explorer and the Aviator and a complete overhaul of its Chicago assembly plant. Still, he said reports referring to the launch issues were overly dramatized. Ford also is dealing with fallout from faulty dual-clutch transmissions and has now discontinued Focus and Fiesta sedans, which is contributing to increased warranty costs, Stone said. In our next story, U.S. traffic deaths fell 2.4% in 2018 to over 36,000 people, although the number of pedestrians killed rose to highest levels in nearly 3 decades, the U.S. Auto Agency said. NHTSA said traffic deaths fell for the second straight year, down 913 from 2017. The fatality rate fell by 3.4% to 1.1 fatalities per 100 million miles traveled, the lowest rate since 2014. Despite the decrease in overall deaths, pedestrian and bicyclist fatalities continue to rise, with deaths of those on foot climbing 3.4% to 6,283 last year. The number of people killed on roads while using bicycles and other non-motorized vehicles rose 6.3% to 857. More pedestrians and cyclists were killed in 2018 than in any other year since 1990. Deaths of pedestrians have jumped by 42% in the last decade, even as the combined number of all other traffic deaths has fallen by 8%. Auto safety experts say the growing number of drivers distracted by mobile devices is at least partly to blame. NHTSA said October 22nd is looking for ways to reduce fatalities among pedestrians and bicyclists. The governor's Highway Safety Association said in February the increasing shift in U.S. vehicle sales away from passenger cars to light trucks is a factor in the rising number of deaths. The group said the number of pedestrian fatalities involving utility vehicles increased at a faster rate, 50% from 2013 to 2017, compared to passenger cars, which increased by only 30%. Earlier this month, AAA said its research showed that automatic emergency braking systems designed to stop vehicles from striking pedestrians did not always work effectively and had a significantly higher failure rate at night. 3/4 of all pedestrian deaths take place at night, NHTSA says, while 38% of pedestrians killed had some alcohol in their systems and 74% were not at intersections when struck. NHTSA said it may include technologies tied to the safety of pedestrians and bicyclists when it revises its 5-star new car assessment program. In 2017, the United States had 6.4 million traffic crashes reported to police agencies, resulting in 2.7 million injuries, according to NHTSA report released last month. Still, U.S. roads are far safer than they were a century ago, when the fatality rate was nearly 5 times higher and more than 50,000 people died annually in crashes. Well, that's it for this edition of Auto Talk. I'm Dave Kenny, and as always, may the wind be at your back as you cruise down life's highways.